Emily from Two Roaming Souls, and today I want to share with you a trip planning guide to Nusa Penida. We absolutely love this island and its incredible natural scenery, but there are some challenges you might face when coming over to this island, so that's what we want to share with you today. We also have another video all about the best things to do in Nusa Penida, so definitely check that out for context about some of the places we mention here. And just a quick note, I'm gonna try to pronounce everything correctly, but I will likely mess up. So first, let's start off, where even is Nusa Penida? Nusa Penida is located off of Bali's southeastern coast, which is the first challenge you'll face, which is how to get to Nusa Penida. There is no airport on Nusa Penida, so you will need to take a ferry or fast boat over to the island. And you can get here from either Bali or Lombok. The two main ports in Bali are Sanur Harbor and Padang Bai. And then from Lombok, the main port is Bangsal. And then on Nusa Penida, there are two main harbors, Banjar New Harbor and Sampalan. But then a bunch of tour companies also have their own piers and docks. But just know that most of the ferries and fast boats are around the north part of the island. The main mode of transportation from Bali to Nusa Penida is by fast boat, although there is one local ferry called Ro-Ro. It is a bigger ferry and you can take motorbikes over with it. Apparently it is super cheap, but just note it is very unreliable and it's really hard to find information of timing and when this ferry comes and goes from Nusa Penida. So really one of your best options is to take a fast boat from one of the two harbors in Bali. If you're coming from Lombok or the Gili Islands, there are bigger ferries which I do suggest taking because the seas between Lombok and Nusa Penida can be pretty rough. And again, it can be kind of confusing and hard to get the information because when you're booking your ferry, it'll say you're leaving from this harbor and arriving at this harbor, but sometimes they leave out the information that you'll be stopping at 3 different ports along the way before you get to your end destination. And even if you ask the tour operator, will we be stopping at these ports, sometimes they won't even give you a straight answer. So just know that you might have to stop at some of these ports along the way before you get to your end destination. Especially if you're riding a big ferry from Lombok, they'll likely stop in Padang Bai and then transfer you to a fast boat to get you to the island. There are a couple fast boat companies that will go between the two islands, but I don't really suggest taking this mode of transportation because the seas can be pretty rough and I don't know if you've seen some of the media, but some boats have capsized between the two islands. So taking a bigger ferry I think is much safer and will be a much smoother ride. When we went to Nusa Penida, we left from Sanur Harbor and we went with the company Angle Fast Boat. And they did provide us life jackets and everyone had to put one on for the transportation, which we really appreciated. Just felt safe knowing that I had a life jacket just in case. Some other reputable companies are Ika Jaya and Samaya One. So where can you book these ferries and fast boats? We usually like to book on One2Go Asia. You can book these fast boats for as little as $8 per person. My suggestion is to avoid reading reviews because you'll find a lot of negative reviews about these companies. But just remember that a lot of people don't leave reviews for just an okay trip, so just keep that in mind when you're reading reviews. You can also book these tickets in person at the actual ticket booth, but in peak season tickets might sell out, so I do think it is good to book your ticket in advance. And lastly, you can also ask your hotel. That's what we did the first time we visited Nusa Penida. They helped set up our taxi from our hotel to the ferry port, the fast boat itself, and then a taxi to the hotel. So that was really nice and seamless, and they just kind of helped us along the way. So I think sometimes that's just the best and easiest option to choose. Some other things to be aware of are rough seas can cause cancellations. Obviously this can be pretty upsetting, but just know that it's probably for the best and that the seas are just too rough to get you from point A to point B. And if you follow social media, then you've probably seen some not so successful boat trips to and from the island. But if the tour operator does cancel on you, try to have proof just so you can get a refund or can rebook with the company when it is safe to travel. And lastly, if you're someone that does get seasick, this is probably a time to take your seasickness medication, as the water can be pretty rough between the two islands. How to get around Nusa Penida. So now that you've made it to the island, how do you get around? Nusa Penida is kind of a big island and it can take like over an hour to get from one side of the island to the other side of the island. So pretty much there are 3 ways to get around. You can book taxis, and just note that Grab and Gojek are not available on the island, so you'll find taxis at the harbors or in the popular touristy areas. So I do suggest booking a taxi with your hotel to get you from the harbor to your hotel, because you will probably be overcharged by a taxi. When you do find a taxi driver that you like, get their number and save it into your WhatsApp so that you can contact them when you do want to book a taxi. Another option for getting around the island is to book a private driver. For a private driver for the day, it costs about like 750k IDR, which is around 45 USD. But you can always negotiate, especially if you feel like you're getting ripped off. Try to get a lower price. A lot of times they will accept that, and you can always tip them more if you feel like they did an exceptional job afterwards. And lastly is renting a motorbike. And I only suggest renting a motorbike if you have experience driving a motorbike already, because this island is not the place to learn. Do note you do need an international driver's license to legally drive a motorbike in Indonesia. You usually need to get these from your home country before traveling, and sometimes it can take weeks to process your license, so just make sure you're on top of that and look up how to get an international driver's license for your specific country. Basically, this translates your physical license into the appropriate language. But with that being said, you'll still likely be able to rent a motorbike without an international driver's license, but legally you do need one. You can rent motorbikes on the island for 75 to 200k, depending on the size of the bike. But I do suggest renting a bike with at least 125cc, because the roads here are pretty steep, they're pretty narrow, and can be super bumpy. So you kind of want a bike that can handle some rough roads. And just note that the roads are not really wide enough for 2 cars, so when a car goes by on a motorbike, it can be pretty scary and slim. So that's why I do suggest you have experience driving a motorbike, you know the balance of the bike, because I think this island would be a good place to accidentally get hurt if you've never driven one before. And especially there's potholes everywhere, so you gotta drive pretty slow and know how to handle a bike. Some tips for driving around the island: if you're going around a corner and it's pretty sandy, you should really take it nice and slow, because you'll spin out if you go a little too fast and you'll fall over. Another good rule is to honk around any blind corner. It can let any other bike or car know that there is someone around the corner and to scoot over. Because you'll notice a lot of people just kind of drive in the middle of the road if they assume no one's coming. And if you can't see around a corner, then just drive really slow and just assume a car is there. And just note that traffic can get pretty bad around the harbors, especially with day tours coming over from Bali. So try to avoid these areas in the morning and in the evening when tours are leaving again. For example, we booked a snorkeling tour and we kind of just sat in a car and moved like inches every 5 minutes. So we just ended up getting out and walking, and it would have been much faster to do that to start off. You should definitely download a map of the area for offline use, because the internet can be hit or miss around the island, especially in the middle. So when choosing between a motorbike and a driver, obviously a driver can be nice because you're in comfortable seats, you got AC, music, but like I said, the roads don't really allow 2 cars to go by sometimes, so having a motorbike can be a lot nicer, and especially in the tourist areas, to just be able to meander between cars, so you can go a little bit faster, but obviously the seats are a little bit more uncomfortable, and if it starts to rain, then it can be a little challenging to be on a bike. Where to stay? Nusa Penida is divided into the north, northwest, west, east, southeast, and the middle of the island. The north is personally our favorite. You get views of Mount Agung, plenty of great restaurants to choose from, and there's pretty nice hotels, and it's pretty easy access to and from the harbors. Then there's the northwest, which is also a good place to stay. It's closer to the activities on the west side. You can get good views of Nusa Lembongan and Nusa Ceningan, and there's closer access to some of the better swimming beaches. You'll have the west, which is close to Kelingking Beach, but I'd really only suggest taking a day tour over here. I don't really think you need to stay over here particularly, because you're not really staying with views of Kelingking Beach. But if you just want to be closer to this area, then there are some good options for accommodation. The east side of the island is kind of the locals area, so I wouldn't really say there's a ton of great hotels and accommodation over here. There's not a ton going on, so I'd really only suggest staying over here if you want more of that local feel and just to be closer to like local restaurants and stuff. And then you have the southeast, which can have epic views of Diamond Beach and the Ata King 5. And lastly, there is the middle of the island. There's not a ton going on. You'll find some like locals living around here. There's some little local markets and some little like restaurants, but there's not a ton going on here. It's pretty peaceful in the middle, but I wouldn't really suggest staying here, but it can be pretty fun to drive through here in the middle of the day. We've personally stayed on the north side twice now. 2 of our favorite places to stay are Gara Seaview and Patek Cottage. Both are pretty similar and located up on the hill with views of Mount Agung. Gara was the place we stayed at first, and like I said, they helped us set up everything, taxi, ferry, and getting to and from the hotel. So that part was super nice. It's more of a newer build. There's a restaurant on site, but it is a little further away from the main attractions on the north. So you might need to rent a motorbike if you want to get to some other restaurants. Patek Cottage was the other place we stayed, and this is a cheaper option. It's more centrally located in the north. There's no restaurant on site, but it's definitely within walking distance to some of our favorite restaurants on the island. Both of these accommodations had outdoor showers, which kind of brings me into just get ready to embrace nature here. You'll have lots of bugs and lizards living in the bathroom and maybe in your cottage as well. But it is a tropic, so just embrace it and just don't leave any like food out, otherwise ants will likely find it. And honestly, like sewage smell is pretty common with a lot of these accommodations here. So that's why having an outdoor bathroom is pretty nice, because then that smell just stays in the bathroom and not in your actual accommodation. Real quick, we wanted to talk about 2 items that have been a game changer for our travel needs, and that is the Matador Speed Stash and their flat pack soap bar case. The Speed Stash attaches to any backpack strap for easy access to your phone, wallet, passport, keys, etc. And another addition to our travel setup is their flat pack soap bar case, where you can put a wet bar of soap in it and then just throw it in your bag without getting the rest of your stuff wet. This is awesome when you just want to take a shower before leaving your hotel room, but you don't have time for the bar of soap to dry. And with their dry-through technology, the bar of soap can dry inside the bag without air. So this can also be great for anyone using the shampoo and conditioner bars as well. So if you're looking for 2 items that can just make your travel days much easier, then don't sleep on these Matador accessories. We'll leave a link to these 2 items in the top right and in the description below. Best time to visit Nusa Penida. Typically, dry season is from May to October, with the busiest times being July and August. And so that means rainy season is typically from November to April. Rainy season can honestly still be a good time to visit. Jake and I visited in March of 2023 and honestly had better weather than when we visited again in October 2025, which was near the end of dry season, where we kind of had cloudier days and the sea was a lot rougher. So technically we had a better experience in rainy season than in the end of dry season, but we kind of visited more in the shoulder season and the rainy season was definitely showing up. And just keep in mind that during rainy season, there might be a little bit more cancellations to your fast boats and ferries, and some of the tours might be canceled just due to rough seas. And just note that during rainy season, it can be tough to drive a bike in the rain, so you might not be able to go to some of these top attractions. So I really do suggest like going in the middle of dry season if you can, and then you'll probably have some of the better weather then. How long do you need on Nusa Penida? If you want to see all the amazing sights on Nusa Penida, then I definitely think you need 2 full days on the island. There are some day trips over from Bali which will take you to the top attractions, which if that's all the time you have, then you should definitely choose that. But ultimately, I do think you need 3 to 5 days here. I'll put up an ideal itinerary on the screen right now. This is how I would shape 3 days here. But if you like to travel a little slower, then you can spread some of these top things to do out a little bit over 5 days instead. And just know that tours are typically divided into the East and West tours, and I'll put up on the screen what that typically means. And you typically don't do an East and a West tour in one day. It would just be too much driving around the island. And we do have a guide for the top 10 things to do in Nusa Penida, so if you are interested in learning about all of these other great things to do on the island, then you should definitely check that out. We'll link it in the top right corner and in the description below. Avoiding crowds. Sunrise is really the only way to avoid crowds because the day tours are not over from Bali yet, so it's really just anyone that's staying on Nusa Penida. So I'd say the middle of the day is definitely the busiest time on Nusa Penida because it's everyone from the island and everyone that's coming over for a day tour. You can get a little bit more solitude during sunset, but I will say it's definitely a little more popular for sunset rather than sunrise. So if you're trying to avoid crowds, sunrise is your best option. Do you need to speak Indonesian? Honestly, no. Most tour operators know a good amount of English, especially know how to communicate with you about certain things. It is good to know certain phrases like hello or thank you, or maybe if you have like a food allergy. Our best suggestion is to download Google Translate for offline use, and you can write any phrase you want and then it'll translate to their language, and that's how we communicate for some more complicated sentences. But no, for the most part, you can speak English and get the point across for what you're trying to ask. Staying connected, cell phones, and Wi-Fi. Our favorite way to stay connected is to set up an eSIM on our current phone. It's super nice to just be able to use our phone seamlessly and just switch to that eSIM instead of our current phone plan. It takes about 5 minutes to set up and it's super seamless. We have a whole guide on our channel using SIM Local and how to set it up if you're interested, so we'll link to that in the top right and in the description below. We've also used the Solus Pro 5G on other international trips, and it also doubles as a battery bank, so it's a great 2-in-1. They have anywhere from a pay-as-you-go to monthly plans and global plans if you plan to travel to different areas of the world. It's not locked to a single carrier, so it can scan for different providers in the area, which can be really nice when you're traveling. But I'd say the biggest caveat is you actually have to buy the physical device, which is not exactly cheap. So this is a better option for digital nomads or people that travel often to really make it worth it. And honestly, there's usually public Wi-Fi at most restaurants restaurants. So that can be a great way to save data and just use your phone when you have Wi-Fi connected. But that does bring me to, you should definitely use a VPN if you're going to be connecting to a lot of public Wi-Fis. It just helps prevent your device from being hacked. It encrypts your data and masks your IP address, making it much harder for anyone to track your activity or intercept your info or find your location, etc. We personally use Surfshark, so we'll leave a link in the description below if you're interested in checking out that VPN as well. With that being said, service is not super great on Nusa Penida, so definitely have any apps that you want downloaded for offline use downloaded before heading over there. Travel medical insurance. Jake and I always get travel medical insurance when we're traveling away from our home country, because sometimes accidents happen. We personally use Safety Wing because it has super affordable plans and comes with a $0 deductible. And having travel medical insurance is great if you're planning on doing any hiking or snorkeling, etc. But they do have an additional adventure sports add-on, which you'll want to have if you plan on renting a motorbike, if you plan on going scuba diving and doing a little bit more adventurous sports. We'll link to Safety Wing if you're interested in checking that out, but definitely stay covered with travel medical insurance because accidents happen and you'll want to be covered and feel safe that you can go to a doctor in case anything happens. Money and currency exchange. They use the Indonesian rupiah here, which is sometimes abbreviated as IDR or RP. And I'm from the United States, so $1 US is equivalent to 16,700 rupiah. Obviously, you can check the conversion rate for your specific country, because you want to know generally what the conversion is so you're not getting ripped off for certain activities. You will definitely want to have some cash on hand when traveling around Nusa Penida. A lot of the entrance fees will just be cash only and won't accept credit card. But if you're traveling to a more touristy restaurant, they will likely accept credit cards. But just note that they'll be charging like 3 to 5%. So sometimes it can just be better to have cash on hand and you can avoid that fee altogether. And also it can be good to get money out of an ATM before traveling to the island, just because it's an island and sometimes during peak season they can run out of money. So it's just good to have some money on hand before traveling over there, because if you don't have any money, then you won't be able to do some of the activities. Drinking water. Drinking from the taps in Indonesia is just a big no-no, so you will have to buy your own drinking water over there, which can be really unfortunate because you'll just be adding to this plastic waste problem this country already has. So I do suggest trying to find accommodation that does have water available. They often have the bigger jugs where you can refill your reusable water bottle with, which can be super great for helping cut down on waste. But I personally still like to use a filter with my water bottle just to filter out microplastics. And you're not always positive where the water is coming from, and sometimes the nozzles are not the cleanest looking, so I suggest having a water filter just so you know you have safe drinking water every time. One of the filters we personally recommend is Epic water filters. You can use a water bottle you already have and just buy the appropriate cap that fits onto that water bottle, and then they give you the filter with the appropriate straw that will fit inside. And they do have an everywhere filter, which yes means you can use it with the tap water in Indonesia. They have studies showing the results of bacteria and viruses that this filter can filter out. I'm primarily here on vacation, so I just kind of want to make sure I have fresh drinking water and it's not something I can get sick from. But if I was an expat or someone looking to live in Indonesia full time, then I would definitely highly consider getting this filter to use long term. And honestly, I think it can be a really great idea to travel with this filter, because just in case some sort of natural disaster happens while I'm traveling, then I know I can actually get drinking water and feel safe. So I highly suggest the Epic Water's Everywhere filter to have on hand when you're traveling in Southeast Asia. You can use code 2RoamingSouls for 15% off your order. We'll again link it in the top right and in the description below if you're interested. Vaccines and medications. No vaccines are currently required, but of course you should be up to date on your regular vaccines like tetanus, COVID, etc. But some vaccines and medications to consider when traveling to Indonesia is Japanese encephalitis or malaria, which is spread through mosquitoes. Additionally, there's also the yellow fever vaccine, and you might be required to get this vaccine if you're traveling from a country known to have yellow fever. Other vaccines are hepatitis A, typhoid, and cholera. These are spread through contaminated water or food, and sometimes people that are already infected with it touching your food and water. And lastly, there is a rabies vaccine. If you plan on interacting with the monkeys and have to touch every stray dog and cat that you see, then you might consider getting a rabies vaccine. I personally don't really want to interact with the monkeys, and I try to stay away from the cute little dogs that you see on the street. But just knowing that they might have rabies is good enough to scare me away, so if you're someone that has to do that, then you might consider getting a rabies vaccine before maybe potentially getting bit by one of these animals. Obviously, I am not a medical professional, so please seek out your primary doctor to see if any of these vaccines would be good for you. And just note that some of these vaccines and medications might not be covered, and they can get quite expensive, so talk this over with your primary care doctor. My best advice for avoiding foodborne illnesses is to avoid street vendors, because usually they don't have the best hygiene. And also another tip is just to read reviews of the places you're planning on going to eat. Make sure there's been no recent cases of food poisoning or people getting sick from the food. But just note that the hygiene in this country is not at quite the standard that maybe your country is used to, so foodborne illnesses can just kind of be inevitable. And for mosquitoes, just try to avoid like dusk, or if you want to go out for sunset, then try to wear some bug repellent or try to cover up so you don't get bit by a mosquito. And then also try to avoid rural areas because sometimes they have a higher concentration of mosquitoes. Okay, I think that about covers it. Leave any additional questions you might have in the comments below and I'll try to answer them. Give this video a like if you found it helpful and consider subscribing to learn more about epic places to visit. Thanks for watching and we'll catch you on the next one.